Now, speaking of part of history of Panola County, I think you just received a gift to the library
Yes.
that's challenged you again.
Right. This book has been presented to us by Grady and Johnny Kyle. It is the Kyle story, as nearly as they have been able to get it together. They didn't write the book, but he made it available to us. It was written by Dorothy Hardwick and Bill Kyle. They were the two that got the information together. And it goes way on back, but I thought we'd talk about the part that deals with Panola County, when they came and settled over there on McFadden Creek in Old Center area. And just about everybody over there and everybody on that side of the county is descended from the Kyle original settlers. And there were two brothers that came there from a big family, and others came too, girls, and their husbands came too, but I thought we'd limit our remarks because we can't cover everything. To those two brothers, one, Robert E. Kyle, came and settled. And then his brother, Dr. James Stanhope Kyle, came a little bit later and settled by his brother, and their properties joined on McFadden Creek. And we've had some mention before of McFadden neighborhood dealing with them, but these settlers were there before the Regulator-Moderator War. They got there, actually, the first brother, Robert Edmondson, got there in 1839, and the Regulator War really didn't start until 41. So they were in the middle of it, you see, and McFadden neighborhood was burned and all that sort of thing, you know, so that was their neighbors. Dr. Kyle came and joined his brother, Edmund, Robert E., and they obtained a big spread of land along McFadden Creek there. And Dr. Kyle and his wife had no children. They reared one of her nephews, I believe. But Robert Kyle reared a big family. He and his family made up a big family. I think he had 7 sons and 3 daughters, maybe. I think this is what I found. And it was from this family that most of the Kyles that are over there now came. And this book that they have presented us is a good resource for everybody that's descended, and that's nearly everybody in the south part of the county that's descended from them. Now then, this is the Old Center neighborhood, right near Old Center Church. This Dr. James Kyle, James S. Kyle, came there and brought a young bride, and they settled and built a log house that stood there until not too long ago. It was considered the oldest, sturdiest old log house in the county, but I believe it has been moved now. But it was a huge logs, and this book even has pictures of it. I don't know that I can find them, but they're in here, pictures of how the logs went together and what a sturdy house it was. And probably before we're through, we'll run. Here we are. See how those huge logs
had a huge notch, didn't they? Certainly did.
And put together with wooden pegs. And then a picture of the house is here. This is in recent, fairly recent years that this is the old house that still stood. So
it's amazing that they talk about how strong and how efficient that house was built, and we look at it, it looks just like a very modest little cabin.
Right, it sure does. But it was a good, strong house with fireplace for heat, of course, and this was the home of Dr. Kyle, and he immediately started his medicine practice all over this area, into Louisiana, and as far as Shreveport, by horseback. See, they went on personal calls to the families. So country doctors, and he made a fortune at it. I mean, in a few years, he didn't live all that long. Now, he, as I said, created a home, he and his wife, for one of her nephews, and then I think they probably reared some other, or helped some other young people. And he meant to help educate his brother Robert's children, but he didn't live to do it. He died. But his brother was the administrator of his estate when he died, and it was a good size estate. And from those 7 sons and 3 daughters, I believe I remember, have come big families. And from them we have the Kyles that we know today. Not only the Kyles, but a lot of other names fit into this. And between these 2 brothers, they had, as I said, a great mass of land there. Now, Robert had the large family, and Dr. James had none. But actually, the land and fortune was together. I mean, they all profited, and some of the descendants have held on to some of that land still that was in that family. There are legends about the Kyles that I think are kind of interesting. Dr. Kyle and his bride moved from Mississippi to Texas by a wagon train, by just a wagon. And on the way, one horse died, and they finally came on in with a one-horse wagon and $500 in money. And $500 in cash money was pretty good, you know, in 1841. And immediately they built the house, and he started his practice to recapture what he needed for carrying on his medical practice. And there were other legends concerning them. The Kyle brother, now this is Robert E., that reared the large family. He had married twice, and his second wife died when the sister that was living at home was 15. She was the chief cook for the large family of father and sons, and they farmed, worked hard in the field. And one day, so the story goes, one day when they were in the field at work, she was cooking lunch, dinner, they called it, and the house caught fire. And they were off in the field, but they saw the smoke. They were hoeing, and I don't know whether it was hoeing cotton or corn. Everybody hoed everything, hoed the grass out, you know. And so they came running, and it was a story and a half is the way Hazel Kyle described it in her story of the family. It was a story and a half high, but it was on fire all over when the men got there. And the father, now this is the father of Fred and Kit and all of these that are the fathers of Grady. And see, this is his grandfather now that had this house. And he just hit the house running upstairs, and the sons tried to, some of them groaned about it, but then they tried to keep him from going upstairs, and he paid no attention at all. And they saw him coming back dragging his trunk. And they did not know that his trunk was his bank. And there were no banks then. See, this was before the day of banks in this area. And he dragged that trunk down the stairs and out in the yard, and that was his salvation for building a new home. Had enough money in that trunk to risk his life to get it, but went right to work building a new home because he had the cash to do it. This is an interesting story, and these homes were right on McFadden Creek over there in the southern part next to Shelby County. And the two families did what all the early families did. When they died, they were buried right there at home, and it became a family cemetery. So there were two little family cemeteries, one on each farm. One was Dr. Kyle's family cemetery, and the other was his brother, Kyle. So those are lost now, except maybe a stone or two, but they know the locations where they were. And this is true all over this county. They're back in the woods somewhere. And this was really wild wilderness territory when they came in there. And they cleared land and went to work on it. And this father of all these sons was a hard worker, and he taught his sons to work. Took them to the field and taught them, so they soon came up financially and did well. Now then, what about the Kyle descendants? I thought this is what many people would be interested in, because the Kyle descendants are everywhere, and they need to know that we have this book that gives so much of their early story. And if they want to do the research, why, we welcome them to the library on the days that we're open. From Robert Kyle, who lived from 1805 to 1875, comes the large family. And Robert E., or Robert Edmondson. And he was appointed when Dr. Kyle died. Now, you see, Robert lived till 1875, after the Civil War. Dr. Kyle died in the 1850s, before the Civil War. And his brother was his administrator. Now, Dorothy Hardwick explains here in this book that Dr. Kyle's wife contested her brother-in-law's being the administrator, but and she wanted to be in charge of it herself. It was a pretty large estate, though, and the court paid her no attention at all. Women weren't supposed to be able to manage large estates, so Robert Kyle went ahead and took care of the estate. It was extended in the probate over 3 or 4 years before it was finally settled. But it was about a $50,000 estate in the 1850s. And so he had climbed to that. You know, doctors in that day took whatever people had, and they had land. So that's one way he accumulated so much land. He'd take whatever people had to pay the medical fee, and his land grew, and his stock grew. You know, I mean, they'd trade cattle, or they'd trade whatever they had to pay doctors' bills. And so doctors accumulated a fortune pretty early. And by the time he died, he came here in 1841, and I believe he died in 1857 or 6 or something. That's a relatively short time to raise a fortune.
It really is.
In pioneer times. But he did it, and the family, as I said, are buried at the home place. Now, Robert E. Kyle's family, I thought we'd name some of those children, because they're the ones that we know today, the sons and daughters of Robert E. Kyle. He married, by the way, Elizabeth Hooker. No, his son married Elizabeth Hooker. Robert E. Kyle's son, James Stanhope, he was named for his uncle, who was the doctor. And he married first Elizabeth Hooker, and they had 2 daughters, and she died, and he married a second time. And the second time was Sophronia Miller. Now, he had a large family, as I said, 7 boys and 2 daughters is what this record said. And I thought those boys' names are so familiar to most people that it would be interesting to read the list. There was Jeff Kyle, Alvin Kyle, Jim Kyle, a long-time commissioner in this county, Kit Kyle, now that's Grady's father. Father. and June Kyle, and Fred Kyle. That's Miss Hazel's husband, you see. And Bernard Kyle is Miss Estelle's husband. So you see, that's the 7 boys. Now then, not all of them reared big families, but some of them did. And then the daughters were connected with other families through marriage. And so life with that family included the fire upstairs, and I've told you that. And this was the family that, you know, that built the new house with cash out of the trunk. So they were thrifty people, hard-working people, and accumulated good livings. And I understand from going through these notes here that he was able to give each of his children a plot of land when he reached maturity. I listed some family connections that I thought would surprise some people, and this is just a sampling of what's in this book, but these families are all connected, the Woolses, and that takes in J.B. Williams' family, John Ben Williams and all that delegation come from the Woolses. All right, the Woolses are intermarried with them. Then that gets Williams's, the Meeks. One of the girls married a Meek, and several Meek graves in Old Center Cemetery. The Hilliards, and they figured in, have a pretty interesting story about how the Hilliards played a part in the regulated moderated war. Then the Finkleys, they were intermarried with the Finkleys. There's still Finkleys over there at Old Center. The Laces, connected with the Laces here in town, and of course Laces have lived, this same Lacey bunch is across the river as well, on the east side of the county. So you see they spread pretty well. The connection spreads all over. Then Hardwick, and Dorothy Hardwick is the one that did most of the research, besides Jim Kyle did too. And then Randall, one of the heroes of the Civil War. He was one of the sons of one of the daughters, and he's buried at that famous Marshall Cemetery where so many are, Horace Randall, and he became a general in the Civil War. The Barons are intermarried, the Conways, the Stillwells, I've mentioned the Meeks, the Rowes. Mr. Rowe was the foundation of the Old Center community, just about it, and he was there in the Texas Revolution. And so one of the Rowe daughters married a Kyle, and the list goes on and on. A family like this has helped to establish this county, and their descendants are everywhere. And I challenge the people that are descendants to come find out about themselves. Come find out there are a lot of stories in here, but mainly this is pointing up the relations from generation to generation, which is what you have to have if you're searching the generations of your family. So we're real proud of this, another treasure in our library. And we have so many family stories now. It's just a joy to walk in and say, all of these are family stories. Look for your family name and you have it made. You can just add to it and you have it made.
Outstanding. It's neat. Enjoyable, as you say.
Yes, it's enjoyable
amazing
to see. Now, I fit in here and go from there. And you can get all your children tied in that way.
Very good. I knew that the Kyle family was a very large family, but I didn't realize just how many families
everywhere.
That it touched.
You get one family that was early and had a large family, and you have delegation from everywhere.
Generation by generation.
Generation by generation.
Very
Spreads
good.
and spreads. My own great-grandfather, when I did, and of course he settled over here on the west side of the county, but I traced over 800 from him.
Good.
Named them in my book on him. And he came here with a family of 10. And when it comes on down from that family, you see, it populates a big area.
It certainly does. Ms. Grown, thank you again for sharing this
Well,
wonderful information
I'm
with us.
interested in all these families, and I want them to know what we have.